Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you at Jarvis, welcome. And for those of you not at Jarvis, we'd like to welcome you. My name is Mr. Mann. I am the principal at Jarvis Traditional School in Delta, British Columbia. So what an afternoon this is. We are so excited. It's going to be just fantastic. We've been looking forward to this for a while. We have a very special guest here to join us. So first I'd like to welcome all of our viewers across Canada who are here joining us in Delta. And we are very honored to be on the traditional lands of the Musqueam Boston First Nation, who have been stewards of this land since time immemorial. We do have another guest that we would like to introduce. We have Mr. Doug Shepherd here, our superintendent of schools for the Delta School District. So welcome, Mr. Shepherd. So we've been working with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra for the last 2 or 3 months, and it's been incredible. We've had musicians come join us from UC and from the VSO, but someone who's played a very important part in this is Ms. Thornton, and she's helped organize and schedule, and it's quite a feat, so I'd like to welcome Ms. Thornton.
Good afternoon, everybody. So as Mr. Mann has just told us, this year our school has had the privilege of being involved in the VSO Elementary Connects program. And we have had very talented musicians from the University of British Columbia and members of the Symphony Orchestra coming to work with our students, performing for them, answering their questions, and for our grade 7 band students, giving them some direction in improving their skills. And today we are honored to have Maestro Bramwell Tovey here to visit us. He is a Grammy and Juno Award-winning conductor and composer. He has directed symphonies all over the world, and we have been lucky enough to have him with us in Vancouver since 2000. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Maestro Tovey.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. It's so great to be here. And, you know, there's so many of you. I'm getting a bit nervous. So I'm going to play something just to help me relax. Never mind you. I'm going to play a piece of music. This tune, actually, was very popular with your teachers' generation when they were growing up. And I hope you enjoy it. And I'll tell you what it's called afterwards. you very much. Thank you. That's very kind of you. So that piece was called Autumn Leaves, and you probably saw your teachers all jiving away. They know the words. I'm not even old enough to know the words to that one. But it's a fun piece. I'm only joking, of course. That's a piece of jazz. We call that jazz because that's sort of improvising around a tune, just having a little bit of fun with it. And what we do at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra is mostly written down. 99.99% of the music that we play is written down. And my job is to stand in front of everybody, and I have one of these things, which I've got here. Can anyone tell me what this is called? Young lady here. Yes. A conductor stick sort of thing? It's got a special name. Anyone know? Lady over here. Yes. Conductor wand. You know, it is like a wand. It's a bit like Harry Potter's wand, actually. But they call it a baton, which is a French word for stick. So it's the conductor's stick. And with this thing, it's an amazing thing. When I drop it like this, the whole orchestra plays. If I drop it gently, they play quietly. If I drop it slowly, they play slowly. And if I do it quite quickly and with vigor, they play the same way. But then what I do with this stick has to be related to the music that's printed on the sheet in front of us, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And it's quite fun doing it. I can talk about that a little bit later. But what we do is we work with scores written by composers. Sometimes they lived hundreds of years ago. There's not very many people go to work and deal with stuff that was written down hundreds of years ago, but actually musicians often do. And sometimes our music is bang up to date. So this afternoon, I'm going to play some music that's bang up to date and some music that's very old. Now, I'm going to start with a piece of music by a composer called Ludwig van Beethoven. There was one thing about Beethoven's personality and biography, that is to say, the story of his life. There was one thing that really stuck out in people's minds. When you say Beethoven, what do we think of about Beethoven? Over here, young man. Yes? Nice and loud? He was a great musician, but he had one difficulty as a musician. Does anyone know what that might be? Young gentleman here. He was deaf, that's right. Now this was what he used to hear inside his head. So if you just listen very carefully, you can hear a bit of humming, a scrape, you can hear the odd noise, the odd click and the odd buzz. So he didn't live entirely in a world of silence. Sometimes he had whistles seemingly going inside his head. So what he would do was that he would write this music down, and towards the end of his life, he had absolutely no possibility of ever hearing it, but he knew that this music would sound great, and so he wrote it down and hoped for the best. I'm going to play a piece of music that he wrote when he was going deaf, and it was a very sad time because he didn't know why he was going deaf. Nowadays, people think it's probably because he drank his coffee from a mug made of lead. Ugh. But in those days, people didn't realize that lead was poisonous. And it's thought from a lock of his hair that was subjected to a DNA test that maybe this was the reason that he went prematurely deaf. So as I play this tune, just think about it. We're listening to it here in Delta, British Columbia, one of the most beautiful parts of Canada. We're listening to it almost getting on for 200 years after Beethoven died. And we're going to hear a piece that he actually never heard. So when he wrote it down, and he looked at the piano, and he used pretty much the same fingers that I'm going to use today on the same notes, he could see his fingers going down, but he didn't hear all the music. And sometimes as you listen to this music, you can hear punchy little chords. It's almost as if Beethoven's getting frustrated and he's banging the piano to see if he can actually hear a little bit more of what's going on. This is called a rondo. It's from a sonata he wrote called the Pathétique Sonata, which doesn't mean the same in French as it does in English. It really means a tragic sonata. So for Beethoven, this was a tragedy that he lost his hearing. So with his fingers, he expressed himself, and he played in public, but he never actually heard what you are going to hear, most of you, I think, for the very first time. A rondo is a piece of music where the tune keeps coming round and round. It comes around about 5 times. The last time's cut short a bit, and both the hands are working very hard. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much indeed. So that's a piece by Beethoven, and he just gave that a name. He called it a sonata, the Pathetique Sonata, a sort of tragic sonata, and that was the last movement. I'd like to play a piece for you by a composer who lived a little bit after Beethoven. Beethoven died in 1827. I'd like to play a piece of music by a composer who died in 1854. You know, that's a very, very long time ago, 1854. And his name was Robert Schumann, and he was married to one of the most famous women pianists and composers of all time, Clara Schumann. Unfortunately, Robert Schumann wasn't very well. He was very sick in the last few years of his life, but he wrote pieces of music with sometimes very short ones with just little names, and I'm going to play one of these pieces for you. What I'd like you to do, if you would, while you listen to it, could you listen to it and see if you can guess what it's called? Because this piece of music tells us something about Robert Schumann's very sad life. It's got a one-word title. So when I've finished, I'm going to ask, what's the title? Okay, so I need you to tell me what you think the title is. Here we go. A piece of music by Robert Schumann. Okay, so any guesses? It's a one-word title. What might it be called? Young lady here.
Love.
Love. You know, that's a pretty good guess, a very good guess. It's a one word, it's not too long, and but it isn't called Love. But let's remember that when I tell you what the title is called. Young lady here. Memories. You know, that's also a very good guess. You can hear love in there, can't you? And you can hear memories. What's yours?
Life.
Life. Life is about memories and love. So all three of you are very, very close. Really close, but not quite there. Let's have young gentleman there. In the, what did you call it? Death. You know, death might be involved, but it's not an abrupt death, but there might be a sadness or something coming from death. Let's try this young man here. Happiness. Well, I think sometimes, you know, when you have music that makes you sad, It makes you remember happiness when you've got memories and love. And so there is always a degree of happiness when there's a degree of sadness too. What's your guess, young lady?
My guess is sadness.
Your guess is sadness. That's a pretty good guess. Pretty good guess. Let's try this. Yep, one here. Peace. There is a little bit of peace in there, isn't there? Because it's not too, it doesn't make you, the music doesn't make you sort of want to get up and jive around. It's very calm. So there's a bit of peace. All of you are very, very close. Young man here. Yes. Nice and loud?
Quiet.
Quiet. And who said misery? All right. Misery. Misery, quiet, not too bad. Feelings. These are all really good guesses. Young lady here. Relax. That's pretty good. Okay, hang on. One gentleman at the back. Heart, did you say? Yeah. You're not far off. This one? What do you think? Pardon? I didn't hear what you said. Pardon? Parting. Oh, excuse me. It could be parting. Could be something about it. And your guess? Nice and loud? Loneliness. You know, that one is almost the closest one in. Loneliness. The piece is called, are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? It's called Why? Now, why is that a good title? Well, because, have you ever thought about it? When we ask a question like, when we talk about the word why, when we say why, we sometimes say, why have I run out of chocolate? And sometimes it's very serious. Why haven't I eaten chocolate for 2 days? But sometimes it's very sad. Why was that person so mean to me? Or why didn't I do this job that I was supposed to do? Or why didn't I do this thing? Or why did this happen to me? And if you listen to it just for another moment, the first few seconds, I guarantee all you will be able to hear is the word why. Why? Why? Oh, why? And he says why? He says why in so many different ways, so many different ways. And actually, we all say why in a different way. So why shouldn't the same piece of music say why for us in other ways? Now, I need a special volunteer to help me on the next piece. Hang on a sec, hands down. Has to be this special. I believe there is somebody here, I haven't been told who, but there's somebody here today who's having a birthday. Who would that be? Who's the person who's... Oh, this young gentleman here. Give him a big round of applause. Would you come and help me? This is always exciting and fun because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this gentleman's help. Now first of all, we shake hands. How are you? Do you want to come and stand up here just a bit closer to the middle? We've never met before, have we?
Yes.
Yes, we've met before? No, we haven't, right? See, this is very important because what I'm going to do is I've got a little magic trick, and I don't want everyone, the ladies and gentlemen, to think that you and I cooked this up last night. I didn't come over to your place last night and work this out, right? No. Good. Just wanted to be clear about that. Good. Would you write your name down for me? Just your first name will be great. Can you rest on something there? Are you okay? Oh, you're going to do it like that. Okay. That's no problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the musical letters from this young gentleman's name, and I don't know his name. Thank you very much. I'll take the pen back from you. So that is Rowan. Is that Rian?
No, it's Rayhan. It's Rayhan.
It's Rayhan, excuse me. So you've got, in the musical letters in your name, Rayhan, are E and A. Did you know that? These are E and A. Now, there's not much scope for a tune there, is there? But did you know that in Germany, they call the letter H what we call B natural? You don't need to know why, but they just do that in Germany. So in German, your name would be... So if anyone's listening in Germany, they'll recognize that little trick. So those are actually the musical letters of your name, okay? So what I'm going to do, and you've only got 3 musical letters. Sometimes people have 6, but once I had somebody who only had 1. That didn't make for a very interesting tune at all. You need more than 1 note to have a melody, right? And you've got 3. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to come and stand around this end of the piano here. Just, if you just stand just a little bit further over so you don't knock the camera over, just step into that space there. There we go, that's perfect. You can see the piano okay? Good. I'm going to make up a piece of music on your name, okay? I haven't got much to go on. Doesn't sound as though it's going to be very complicated, does it? But actually we're going to have an introduction, and then I'm going to play your tune, which I'm going to invent on the spot around these notes. And then, just excuse me for a moment, at the end, I need your help. I can't really explain it, but when we get there, I think you'll recognize what you have to do. Please join in and help me out. If you don't recognize it, then I'm in real trouble. Okay, here we go. This is the piece of music for your name. Can you see that? Let me just see if I can show that in the camera here, if they can see that. Rayan, that's actually not very much to go on, but it's a very, very nice name. Here we go. So here we go. This is a birthday present for Rayan, who you must be 18 today, right? How old are you today?
10.
You're 10 today. You're 10? Wow, you're tall. Okay, this is for Rayan's 10th birthday, and I hope, Rayan, that you like your gift. I'm sorry it didn't come wrapped up in a beautiful paper. Here we go. No pressure, no pressure. Everybody la that. Ready? La, 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 go. All the grown-ups la it. Just the grown-ups? Now just the students. I'm afraid the students won that round. Here we go. Happy birthday, Ian. That's so cool. Just on 3. It's funny. It's funny, you know, there's music everywhere, eh? In people's names, in the piano. If you had just the musical letters of the piano, you just have this one. That's not much. But if you use Ryan's name, you get more musical letters. So just think there's a musical story for everybody. And I tried to play it in different ways so that you could hear different sides of Ryan's personality, even though he and I had never met. Anyway, great pleasure. I wish you very many happy returns as you enter double figures. I entered double figures recently. It was very nice. You'll enjoy it. Now, what about questions? Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask about the orchestra or about music? Make sure a nice, big, loud voice. Young lady here. How long have I been playing music for? Oh, I started about half an hour ago. No, in all seriousness, how many people here are 7 years old? Okay, I started when I was 7 years old to learn the piano. I was a little bit late. We had a piano in our house, and I used to play around on it. That's how I kind of learned to play without music, and then my parents thought they'd better send me to piano lessons. So I started on piano when I was 7 years old, and I guess that was years ago now. It was quite a while. But thanks for drawing attention to it. Young lady here, what's your question? When I was 7, did I want to play the piano? Is that what you're asking? You know, when I was 7, I really wanted to play the piano. And you know why? Because I used to come into the room. We had it in our front room at home, and it was in the same room as the television. And the television, well, that was a new invention in those days, and that used to be on all the time, and I used to look at the piano and think, all these incredible sounds that people get out of the piano, I'd like to learn it. So it was something I asked if I could learn. I thought it was something I'd really enjoy. Young gentleman here, what's your question? How many songs do I perform? Well, you know, it's difficult to say because we call them songs, but that's because of iTunes. They never used to be called that. Sometimes they're just called melodies, and sometimes they're called sonatas, as I was saying this morning. So I really don't know. I'm not sure. I'm a bit old now, and when I was younger, I used to have a rough list of how many songs I had, but I'm never quite sure how many. We have a few questions that have come in on Twitter, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, Kristen.
We have a special question that came in from Miss Chen's class, which is Division 13 at Berkshire Park Elementary in Surrey. And her class asked, Mr. Tovey, how did you become a conductor?
How did I become a conductor? You know, this was partly sad and partly very, very happy. My father died when I was 15 years old, and I was at my local youth orchestra rehearsal a week later, and the conductor said, who would like to have a go conducting the orchestra? And all my friends said, Bramwell, let Bramwell have a conduct. And I realize now that they actually cooked it up. And they gave me the stick, they gave me the conductor's, remember what this is called? The baton. And I went and I conducted a piece by Shostakovich, the great Russian composer, called the Festive Overture. And I dropped my baton for the first time in front of the orchestra, and nothing happens on the way down, there's silence. And when you land, there's this huge explosion of sound. And I found that physically I loved connecting with that sound. So I made up my mind that day to become a conductor. That's how I began. And I went on from there to the Royal Academy of Music and to university. And I really enjoyed conducting, and I've sort of been doing it ever since. Let's see, question here. The top looked like a stick, and the bottom looked like a brush part. It does look a little bit like a paintbrush, doesn't it? But it's actually a little bit of teak wood on this particular one, and I put an elastic band there because I'm terrible at dropping things, and I don't like to drop things in front of the orchestra because that makes me look silly. So I have a little bit of elastic band on the bottom, and that helps me get hold of it when I get hot. Sometimes my hands get very sweaty when I'm conducting. Your question. Do I play other instruments? I do, most certainly. I was a very bad violinist, but I also played the double bass, not brilliantly, but I played it in my local youth orchestra. And I also played pretty much in turn all the brass instruments because everyone in my family was a brass player. So I played pretty much all the brass instruments, although I just nowadays I just have a trombone and a euphonium at home, and I occasionally get them out of the case, have a little blow on them. The piano's the only instrument I play now, sometimes the harpsichord, and very occasionally the organ, but I find the organ you have to use your feet on the pedals, and I have rather cack-handed feet. That sounds wrong, that sounds the wrong expression, but my feet are a bit wonky, so I don't like playing the organ. Your question? Yes? Did I practice the piano when I was 8 years old? Is that your question? How old are you? You're 7, and you're wondering if you need to practice when you're 8. When you practice, it's marvelous because you can go from something that doesn't quite work to something that really works to something that really, really works. And actually, practice is about patience. It's about sitting and looking at the music and just you keep doing it, and you monitor yourself and it gets better. It's better to practice every single day than to practice for an awful lot one day a week. Best to practice every single day. And also make sure your teacher helps you to practice, because sometimes we get a little bit shy of asking our teachers how we practice. What's your question, please? What's my favorite piece of music? You know, this is a good question. I've thought about this a lot for years and years, and in the end I decided the best answer is to say my favorite piece of music is whatever I'm doing next, because if my favorite piece of music was the last piece I played, then that's not really going to be much fun for the next piece. So I usually say to myself, whatever I'm doing today, whatever I'm doing next, that's my favorite piece of music. And my favorite piece of music, therefore, I'm not quite decided what I'm going to play next to finish off, but we'll find out in a minute. You'll see if it's my favorite piece of music at that split second, red hot moment. Yes, your question. How old am I? You know, that's a big secret. It's not a secret because the internet's got it, all the information that you could possibly need. I was born in the same year that Queen Elizabeth was crowned Queen of Great Britain. So I was born 3 weeks after she was crowned. So you can look up that, or you could look up probably my age as well. Let me see. What's your question?
Pretty good at first, or when you started playing the piano, or how many years did it take for you to get good?
Was I pretty good at first, or how many years did it take me to get good? You know, when you're little, when you're small, and you start to learn a musical instrument, and you don't really know how good you're going to be, you have to be prepared to just take it easy at first. So when I started, I could feel that I could be good if I practiced and if I worked at it. And sometimes I think, well, I'd like to be a little better, or I'd like to be a little bit more, I'd like to play a little better. All through the years I've thought, keep practicing, keep practicing. So at first, no, I wasn't very good. It was the same as everyone else. I would look at the piano and I would see all these notes. And when you look at the piano, you know, the piano doesn't make any mistakes. Look at it. Can you hear the piano making a mistake? And when I started to play that tune when I was little, it sounded like this. So, you know, when you start off, it can be a little discouraging. But you just keep going and you relax and you practice. It's like maths. It's like any subject at school. You just have to keep at it, keep at it. Gentleman over here, what's your question on the right? Yes?
Why did you start playing the piano? Did your parents force you, or did you want to do it?
No, my parents didn't force me to play the piano. I played the piano because I wanted to play the piano. What's your question?
Do you play any other type of music?
Yes, I play a bit of jazz, classical music. I like some pop music. One of my daughters had a bedroom full of Justin Bieber pictures at one point. But you know, I never got into Justin Bieber. I'm afraid he's not my thing. And there are some other pieces that I really, really like. What's your question? Yeah.
What's your favorite instrument?
My favorite instrument? That's a good question, because my daughter, I've got two daughters, one plays the violin and one plays the cello. And sometimes I love listening to the cellist, and sometimes I love listening to the violinist. And my son played the guitar, and I love listening to him play the guitar. So I think the important thing is not so much the instrument, but the message that you're trying to get. Sometimes you can have a very good message on the violin, sometimes a beautiful message on the cello, and sometimes the message is wonderful on the guitar. So it's about what you're saying, because you know, with a musical instrument, it's like, as human beings, when we speak, if we're not saying something, then we're not really saying anything. So when you have a musical instrument, you want to say something. All of that is very important. We'll have one more question, and then we'll, let's ask this young man here. What's your question? Did I ever play the saxophone? I did play the saxophone. I played the saxophone when I was about 20, because I loved the sound the saxophone made in a jazz band, and I wanted to play in a jazz band in a saxophone section. So I went out and I bought myself a very cheap saxophone, and I played it in a very cheap way, so that's just as well. I wasn't very good, and I found it hard because you have to get your lips around that reed, and you have to have it just right, and your fingers have to do the right things, and it takes a lot of breath, but I enjoyed it. I don't play the saxophone anymore. I'm a retired saxophone player. Well, you guys have been a great audience, and it's been nice to have a question on Twitter. So I think we're actually at the end of the concert. Now, would you like something really serious to end with, or something jazzy? What do you think? How many people would like something serious? And how many people would like something jazzy? Okay. Okay, I guess, well, that's taking care of that. I guess I'll just have to play something jazzy for you. First of all, before I play it, I'd like to thank you all for being such a fantastic audience. These concerts are such fun for me to do, to go around and to visit schools like this, and to see what a beautifully behaved audience you've been today. Absolutely fantastic. You have a wonderful school. It was so lovely to meet your principal, and to know that you guys love music and that you're interested in our symphony orchestra. Here's a piece that dates back maybe 40, 50 years. It's an old classic called Don't Get Around Much Anymore, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, I'd just like to take this moment to thank Maestro Tovey for coming. We're so fortunate to have this relationship with VSO this year, and we're really excited about the following year. It's just so important to have top-notch musicians come into our schools, work with our students, and for you to be able to come in and share with us.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.